In a home where my mother suffered with depression and my dad was a functioning alcoholic. So from the outside, we looked like the perfect family, but there was just no love, no nurturing, my dad took care of us so that we always had a roof over our heads. We always had food. We always had clothes. But that was where it ended. It was just no love. So of course I grew up to be the cliche, looking for love in all the wrong places and meeting all the wrong people and giving myself to, men who weren't worthy of me. And my mom, I never knew she was depressed. I just never saw her happy. And now I understand that she probably was really depressed because of the way my dad was. He just was this person that had so many women and so many outside children, and so, when he was home, he was mean, he was ugly, he called you names that no daughter should ever hear from their father. And it was just a very difficult childhood, but I somehow survived it.
Yeah. I know when we were speaking, you mentioned when you were 4 years old, something that happened. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yes, when I was 4 years old, we didn't go to nursery that day. It was me, my brother, and my cousin. And my dad's brother molested me. And I can't remember what I had for lunch last week. But I can remember that day as though it happened yesterday. I remember my mom coming home, and that's how I kind of knew how old I was, because she had gone shopping and she was calling me to come try on the dresses that she had bought for me to start kindergarten. And I remember it being so painful, and I somehow knew that she knew, but because it wasn't like it is today, like molestation, people go to jail for it and all of that today. But I think she knew, but she never said anything because we lived in the house with my grandmother and my grandfather and my uncle. So all of those years of seeing him, it never came out until I was probably like 30 plus years old.
Okay. Oh, man. And I know you also mentioned that you were married and you got pregnant at the age of 16 because you were looking for love in all the wrong places because of your childhood. And tell us a little bit about your marriage and kind of how that went, like if he was the right guy for you or what.
Oh God, I almost screamed when you said that. Never. Yes, I met him when I was like 15 years old. He was the classic light-skinned, green eyes, nice hair guy. And we started, being together. I couldn't call it dating. We started being together, and like 4 months later, I got pregnant. And of course, is this my baby and all of this stuff. So I was 16 years old. It was like history repeating itself because my mom had gotten pregnant when she was 16 years old. Didn't know anything about this being generational curses and cycles and all of those things. And so when I was 17 years old, I moved in the house with him. We weren't married yet. Moved in the house with him when our daughter was about six months old. I had a little girl. And when I tell you it was hell, he was abusive, he was on drugs. He would leave us in the house for days by ourselves. And I worked a job, I was working at like Popeye's Fried Chicken because I was a young girl. I had dropped out of high school and everything. And so his family, they were non-supportive. My family was non-supportive because they were so angry that I had gotten pregnant. I don't know how they didn't see it coming. But, and so I lived a life of, it was just poverty. It was, moving time after time, getting evicted, lights being turned off. It was just like too much for a 17-year-old to handle. But again, somehow I did it.
Amen. to fast forward a little bit, I know that you said that you and your husband finally got divorced, and do you want to talk about your child? You want to tell us a little bit about him?
Yeah. So we, as crazy as it seems, I stayed with him. We got married. We had another child, and we had another child. So when back in 1997, my son was 7.5 years old, and he got sick, and he passed away when he was 10 years old. And so we were married, but we were just married. It was like two people living in the house. I think I hated his guts, you know, even though I was a Christian. There were so many days that I wished that he wouldn't come home. But I didn't have time to focus on that because I was so into trying to find treatment. My son passed away from a rare blood disease called aplastic anemia. And so it wasn't something that they knew a lot about, so I went into research mode. So I never had time to really worry about what he was doing, how much drugs he was doing, and the things he was stealing out of the house and all of that. And so when my son passed away, I felt like, what's the use? You know, if I can live without him, I certainly can live without this person. And so I divorced him, and so, yeah.
Okay, and then, so fast forward to like 2005, you told me just how you just said that you were looking for treatment for yourself, and how you met a lady who kind of put you back on track to get to church and healing and everything. You want to share a little bit about that?
So after my son passed away, of course, I went through all of those, you know, the anger, the go back out in the world and do any and everything you can. And in the meantime, I was dating this guy who was married, but then he wasn't married anymore. Then we were married. And so I was in Walmart, and I saw this lady, and she was like, you know, my sister is back in town, and she started a church. And I was like, I don't go to church. I don't do church. And so she was like, oh, you should just come and, you know, see what's going on or whatever. And so that started my journey of healing and being able to get from under that cloud of grief and deal with all of the things that had happened. It was a long process, but that was when I rededicated my life back to God and decided that, you know, I didn't want to live the way that I had been living, separate from God, even though I know he never leaves us, but I know that my life did not look like the life that he had for me.
Okay, and then I know you moved to Dallas from New Orleans, and you were kind of living with your daughter and just depressed, and I think you said you met somebody here to help you, like a mentor, and that's when the healing started, because you were first, an ordained minister, correct?
I was a licensed. So the guy that I was dating, we got married, and like 6 months after we were married, he decided that he didn't want to be married anymore. So we had just had breakfast, grits, eggs, and sausage, and he served me with divorce papers at my job. And I was like, okay, really? You could have told me this, you know, before I left home. And so we had moved into this house after Katrina, and so all of these things were lessons, because I know that he was not the right man for me. I watched him cheat on his wife with me. What did I think? And so when we moved into this house, my name was not on the house. And so when the divorce came, it was like, you have to go take what you can and go. And so I wound up on my daughter's sofa for 18 months. I lived on my daughter's sofa. He took the car back. I was driving a convertible Lexus. He took the car back, everything, because I had allowed him to become God in my life. He was an idol. And so, so he took all of those things back, and I'm living with my daughter, and I'm trying to die literally, you know, just every day. God, don't let me wake up. I can't do this anymore. How much pain can one person suffer? And I meet this lady and she, you know, she begins to mentor me, and she begins to pull out of me things that I could not see. I could not see that God was going to use these things as a testimony. I could not see that somehow this pain was going to become my purpose. And so, and then my son moved here to Dallas. He got married this beautiful young lady, and he started saying, Mom, you know, there's nothing there. What are you doing? You're just laying, you know, what are you doing? So I decided to come here to Dallas, and God has restored everything that I lost, every single thing that I lost in the valley